Hey, I'm Andrew from Ownershift, and I'm going to talk to you today about how I went from nearly bankrupt to having 4 restaurants that run on autopilot. And in this video, I'm going to tell you exactly the steps that I took to get me from that near bankrupt position to turning it into a profitable enterprise that runs on its own. So, the question I get all the time is, Andrew, who are you? You coach restaurant owners, but, do you own a restaurant? Have you ever been there before? Have you done it? A lot of people do that to try and, just figure out how much respect they should give me or if I really understand what's going on. And the fact is, I do, because I've been there and I've done it. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about that story and exactly what you can do if you're in a similar position. So when I started out, I was really young. I was 20 years old, and the only way I was able to purchase my first small restaurant was by getting a bank loan. So I went to the bank, and the bank is like, there's no way we're giving this loan to a 20-year-old kid. I was in university at the time. I kind of realized that the program I was studying in, I wasn't sure if I was going to get a job in my field. So, I thought about going into business. And so what happened was my dad actually co-signed the loan. So if I went under, he would lose his house. Now, what ended up happening is, anytime you're purchasing a restaurant, when you're young, you don't really know anything, you can get screwed over a little bit. So part of what happened for me is that the finances that I was given, basically they weren't accurate. And I didn't know to look for tax returns from the previous years, like you should do, to verify all of the data. I just got basically an Excel sheet with some made up numbers that were put in there. And I believed it. I believed that, this restaurant, is making over 6 figures, and I'm going to do that too, working 20 hours a week. That's what I thought. Reality was very, very different. So I get in there. And I kid you not, like the money that we had, like with some leftover student loans that I had, that was my working capital. We didn't really have a lot of funds to go on. And so I got in there and I realized pretty quickly within a couple months, we were almost bankrupt. We were in overdraft very, very quickly. I had a $10,000 overdraft on my bank account, and I was there for years. And literally within 3 months, I realized that, okay, I need to do something drastic to really help change the situation. Otherwise, we're not going to make it. And if I don't make it, my dad is going to lose his house. And that was a lot of weight to put on my shoulders. So, that I put on my shoulders. Let me clarify that. So basically what I did is we had to go through cutting some hours. I basically started working 80, 100 hours a week. I was still in school part-time at that time as well. So basically what happened was I would work from 10 a.m. and I would work until 7 p.m. at night. Then I would have someone come in and replace me at 7 p.m. and I would go to class. I would run to campus, from 7 to 10. And then I would work from 10 p.m. until 3 a.m. after that. Then I would go home, get a few hours sleep, and come back and do the same thing again. Now I did this for 2 years. And the reason I know that I did this for 2 years was that in that very first year of business, I closed on Christmas Day, and I worked every day after that. And the following year, I didn't close on Christmas. I actually worked Christmas Day myself because we needed every dollar of revenue we could possibly get. And so after that, I still worked the whole next year, and then I took Christmas off again. So that's how I know that I worked 2 full years. It was 80 to 100 hours a week. I don't recommend it. We were open till 3 a.m. I remember putting on about 100, 150 pounds during that time. My blood pressure was skyrocketing. I remember the doctor recommending I take the same blood pressure meds that my grandparents take. So that wasn't something I was going to do. So anyway, over the time that I worked on a few key things. Now, this is what you can do if you're in a place where you're not making enough money in your business. So number one, I had to make sure I controlled my costs. So because I was working so much, my labor costs were low, but my food costs were sky high. So that usually has to do with either pricing or portioning or things like that. So I made sure that I watched those numbers like a hawk. I knew what I needed to be for my numbers, and I tracked them religiously. Daily, weekly, monthly. There was no expense that was coming in that I wasn't watching. I looked at every transaction in my bank account. I made sure that nothing escaped my view, right? If I didn't absolutely need it or it wasn't making me more money, I didn't spend money on it. And I went through this period for years of this. Now, granted, also during that time, it was a situation where I actually got eviction notices at the apartment I was renting. If I was a month late on rent, if I didn't get it by this certain date, I was out. I remember calling my dad up and saying, "Hey, Dad, I don't have enough money for payroll. Like, can you loan me some money until I can then go and get my weekend cash deposits in after the weekend? So then we'll have enough money to do it. But I need to pay people." And so, like, this was my life for years. And a lot of people that look at me now don't understand that I went through this, but I did, and I lived it. And the part that I don't talk about a lot, but I'll share briefly with you, is that there was a really, really dark moment for me when I was driving home after one of these 3 a.m. shifts. And I'm driving along and thinking to myself that it would be better if I just let go of the wheel. So I was crossing this bridge, and I remember having this thought come into my mind. And the reason I'm sharing this is because I thought this was my only way out. I thought that, okay, there's life insurance on the business loan. So, my dad wouldn't lose his house. My employees could find other jobs. And this is something that was a real possibility for me at that time. And so what I want to tell you is that if you are in that place, there are other ways to go about this. And so I don't want anyone to feel like I felt in that moment. And the reason I do what I do today is because I don't want anyone to have to go through the same things that I went through. So it was a really dark time in my life where I was unhappy with everything. My business wasn't performing. My self-esteem was through the floor. It was a really dark time. So monitoring my costs was one thing I did. The other thing I did as well is I just looked at, okay, what are all the ways we can look for revenue? So I looked every possible place. I started doing deliveries. This is back before Uber or any of that was in existence. So we were doing deliveries for our product, which no one else was doing at the time. I was finding ways to go out and do school lunches or to up my catering business. So these are all things that I did. And over the few years in that business, about 3 years, it took me to triple our sales. It was basically by monitoring our costs really, really well, making sure that every customer got quality service, and that brings customers back, and then also looking for every possible revenue opportunity. And it was a slow growth to get there. If I only knew then what I know now, it wouldn't take nearly as long. But for me, learning everything, I didn't have very much support. At least I didn't feel that way. And so I had to do a lot of things myself. So I figured all of that out, and eventually we got to the place where we finally had the cash, we had money. I was able to pay off of my back taxes, which was a pain. And then I got to the point where, okay, I'm ready to open up a new location. So I get there, and we sign the lease, and then I hire over a couple of managers, one to take over my existing location and one to be at the new one. And of course, a few weeks before open, one of them quits. Of course, that's exactly what would happen. And I ended up getting in there, and then I start up my second restaurant, and we opened doing $500 a day in sales. And so this is just flashbacks from when I was doing like $500 a day in sales at my last place. I just worked 3 years of like 100-hour weeks just trying to get out of. And I just remember sitting there on opening day and being like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I'm basically like rocking back and forth. And anyway, so over time, that location has now turned to be my best location, which, again, I ran the same playbook, doing the exact same things. It took a little bit of time, but then I moved on to a third location the following year. We were able to turn things around. And then basically we opened up a fourth one in 2018. So as I was growing here, I got to the 3 location mark, and I wanted to share this with you because most people think, oh, if I just have more locations, it'll be the answer. Like, I'll have more money. And I will tell you that 2 unprofitable locations don't make a profitable one. So just so you know, before you ever expand, make sure that you actually have a really successful location that runs on its own, because then having 2 will just bring more stress and will actually take longer to fix than if you just fix your one, because you can allocate all of your effort there. Hey, quick break in today's episode. Do you want to know exactly what's holding your restaurant back from higher profits and more freedom? I'm offering a limited number of free 15-minute restaurant assessments this week, where my team will personally pinpoint how to get you more profitability and more freedom with your time and map out the steps you need to get there. Simply tap the book a call link in the description below, and we'll see you soon. So the reason I'm saying this is because as I went to multiple locations, one of the things that happened is I got to 3, and I realized that we weren't making the type of money we wanted. Our sales weren't as high as we wanted, and I couldn't even get out of the city limits. I wanted to go and visit some family. I wanted to go and take a weekend away. I couldn't even get out of the city limits. So they'll call me like, Andrew, somebody called in sick. Oh, hey, our POS isn't working. Oh, hey, we ran out of lettuce or something. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we just got all of this stuff all of the time. And I just realized that I couldn't have the life I wanted with the business I had. So I either had to get better or I had to get out. And so at that point, I decided I needed to get better. And so what I did is we went back and we rewrote the playbook for how we did operations, for how we did hiring, for how we did finance and marketing and everything you can imagine. We went back and said, okay, how can I make this work for multiple units? Because I know how to make it work for one, but I don't know how to make it work for multiple. And there was a level of leadership that I needed to grow into as a leader to be able to manage managers, because it's a very different thing. And so as I scaled up, we went back, rewrote everything, and then put it into practice. And sure enough, things turned around. That's when we started making more money. That's when our sales started going up. Things were running better than they ever were before. And it was at this point, the franchise that I was a part of, they came up to me and said, hey, how come your restaurants are running better than our franchisee run locations? You've got a bunch of 23-year-olds that are running your restaurant. And so that's when I said, well, hey, here's what I'm doing. I handed them the playbook of everything I developed. And they were like, hey, so can you come train our corporate team for our corporate stores? And then, hey, can you train a batch of franchisees? And so this was the point where I realized that there was more people out there that needed help. And so there's restaurants all over the US and Canada and the UK and everywhere that need help, because most people are trying to figure out the same things themselves as if it's never been done before. But I did that. I figured it out. And so my mission with Ownershift and what I do now is that no one will have to go through the same things that I went through, because I've been there. I lived it. It fucking sucks. Like, I don't want you to have to do that. So here I am today. I spend about 5 hours a week on the 4 locations that I still have. And then the rest of my time is focused on helping other restaurant owners. So this is where most of my focus is. I wake up every day passionate to try and help other people, because I've been there and I've struggled through it. I don't want anyone else to have to. So if you're in those shoes right now, a couple things I want you to know. Number one, it is not over. You do not have to, burn down your business, although I'm sure there were days when I wish I had a gas can and a lighter. And the thing is, too, like, most people think they can just sell their restaurant as if it's going to be that easy. It's not as easy as you think it is, and you're not going to get as much money as you think you will. So that I knew wasn't going to be an option for me. And so I had to figure out how to do it better. And thank God I did. So again, a couple quick tips. Number one, monitor your expenses. Literally look at everything and say, hey, do I need this? If I don't spend money on it. Make sure you take every revenue generating opportunity. You can't just sit in the kitchen and expect new business to come in. You actually have to go out and find it, and you have to find those opportunities to bring new business in. After that, one of the biggest keys that I ever developed, and I learned this later on, hiring the right people is the biggest business hack that you can ever have, because if you have great people, they can do great things. If you have mediocre people, they will do mediocre things. If you have bad people, they will do bad things. I needed to learn that lesson, because what enabled me to eventually scale is by getting the right people doing the right things in the right places. And so once I did that, everything else worked really, really well. So we do have some tools for that if you're interested. And the other thing too, I wish I would have found someone to tell me what they knew instead of saying, I'm going to figure it out on my own, because I thought there was pride in that. I thought there was pride in suffering. I thought there was pride in being poor and not being able to have time to go to the gym and not being able to pay myself more than minimum wage. Like I was like, I'm building my business. I thought all that was what you had to do, and it is not. You don't have to do it that way. There's a there's a different way that's totally different, where literally in a few months you can learn all the lessons that I learned in 10 years, and we can help you get past where you are. So one of the things I wish I would have done is I wish I would have dropped my ego enough to accept the help and actually listen to other people who had been there and done it, and that would have helped me grow so much faster. So if you're in that place today, don't give up. There is hope, and there are ways that you can improve things. And I hope that you don't convince yourself that you have to reinvent the wheel again, because it's already been done. You can just literally copy what some other people are doing, and you'll be in a much better place. So That's how I went from nearly bankrupt, in overdraft, eviction notices on my door, not having enough money to pay payroll for my employees, to now having 4 locations and now being able to help other restaurant owners do exactly the same thing that I did. So I hope this is helpful for you. If you do have questions, I would love to hear them. I would love to connect with you. But if you're a restaurant owner that thinks that it isn't possible to do better, it isn't possible to make ends meet, it isn't possible to have a great business, there's an opportunity for you. There's a different way to do things. And just because of the way you've done things this far doesn't mean that's how you have to do them in the future. So if what you've been doing hasn't been getting you the results, there is a different way, and I hope you take it. All right, bye. This episode is brought to you by Ownership Training, where we help restaurant owners increase their profits while spending more time with their family. And if you want to know exactly what it would take to grow your profit margin to 15% and beyond while spending more time with your family, my team has a few spots open this week for a free 15-minute restaurant assessment call. Just click the Book a Call link in the description, and we'll show you the exact frameworks we're using to help our clients do this in as little as 6 to 8 weeks. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.